Greetings class. I'm creating this video to go through the two different methods of cost allocation from service departments and or cost centers to our producing departments. And it's going to be based off of the examples that we did in class, but I just wanted to go through this and give you an Excel file to take a look at it. So I've got two different worksheets. The first one is the direct method, which is the first method we talked about, and then the step down method is the second method that we'll go through. So the direct method is where we're just allocating all of the costs from each of the service centers directly to the producing centers without allocating any of the service center costs over to the other service center. So there are 4 steps associated with this, and what we're looking at is first creating the allocation base, and for this we have $9 million worth of overhead that we have to allocate. Our service departments or our cost centers is building services and food services, and they each have an annual estimated cost of $9 million, not each, but in total $9 million, and this will get allocated out based on a usage of these services, and we call that the allocation base. So we figured out the allocation base for each of these services is for building services either the square footage of the building that these departments consume, and we also look at how much the service departments consume, as well as the producing departments. So 2 service departments are building services and food services. The producing, which are our profit centers, would be the intensive care, surgery, and general medicine, and then the food service is allocated based on the number of meals. So the first method that we have is the direct method, again, to where we're just allocating the cost of either building services or food services out to each of the producing departments based on how much of the allocation base they're consuming. So the first thing that we have to do is figure out what the total allocation base is for the producing departments that we're going to allocate out to. So we really want to isolate the producing departments and then just figure out what percentage they are of the total of that allocation base. So if we start with building services, as far as allocating out the cost of building services first, building services is by square footage, and intensive care, surgery, and general medicine take up 10,000, 20,000, and 40,000 square feet of the building. So what we want to do is see what percentage of the producing these are. So what you do is you take the total, 70,000 is what the producing departments consume, and for intensive care you will take the 10,000 divided into 70,000, and they take up 14%, and this is actually number 2. Calculate the percentage of each production department and what they are of the total allocation for the production department. So 1, we need to get the total. 2, calculate the percentage each producing department is of that total. So then this is the formula taking into account 10,000 divided into 70 gives us 14%, and then this one here is 20 into 70, which gives us the 28%, and then last but not least the general medicine is 57%. So then we need to multiply that out 3, so we got the total. The total helps us figure out the percent each one consumes of the allocation base, which is the square foot. And then we use that percentage to actually allocate the $6 million for building services, the $6 million out to each of the producing departments. So we multiply the percentage times the total cost for that department to figure out how much each of the producing departments pick up of that cost center or that service center. So that's exactly what we're doing. So intensive care picks up 14% of the 6 million, which is 857,000. Surgery picks up 28%, which is 1.7 million. And then general medicine picks up the rest, which is 3.4 million. So that's a total of 6. So then what you need to do is you need to go back, because you do steps 1 through 3 for each. So that was S1. Now we need to do S2, which for this one would be food services. So we repeat for food services. The allocation base here is the number of meals, so again we're only going to concentrate on the producing departments, which are intensive care, surgery, and medicine, and then how much of the base they contribute to. So if we add those 3 together down here, which is our first step, it's 98 plus 4 plus 3 gives us 105, so then we want to figure out the percentage of each. Again, so the 3,000 divided into the 105 gives us the 2.86%, and then the 3.81, and then the 93. So then we multiply that by the total estimated cost for the cost center of food services to get the actual allocation. So intensive care, with their small number of meals that they consume in comparison to the total, picks up 85,000 out of the 3 million. Surgery picks up 114, and then general medicine picks up the rest. So then the final aspect of this is, since we're allocating the cost from the service departments, both service departments, to each of the producing departments, is to calculate how much of the cost each producing department receives. So then we do that down in step 4. So the building services and the food services are listed here as far as how much they're giving to each of the producing centers. So intensive care picks up $942,000 of the total $9 million cost. Surgery picks up 1.8, and last but not least, general medicine picks up 6.2. So that makes up the total of the $9 million. So this is part 1, the direct method. I will do a part 2, which will be the step down method using the same information, but the allocation and the way it's done is just a little bit different.